Two Geeks, Two Beers. Episode 43, Ranking the Sherlocks.
Sherlock!
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, easy,
Nicely
no messing.
done.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.
Elementary, my dear Eames.
Well, hello, and welcome to episode 43 of Two Geeks, Two Beers with me, Tom, and my dear geeky companion in crime, Morgan.
All right.
So we were accidentally sort of martial arts heavy in our past 3 episodes.
Really?
Because we had Bruce Lee,
Yeah.
the Turtles,
Yeah.
and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So we're sort of taking a different tact now, something a bit different. We're sort of taking one particular character from history and delving into sort of its history, but not, well, you'll see. It's about Sherlock Holmes. Thoughts?
Thoughts on Sherlock Holmes? just broadly.
What's your history? Do you have a history of Sherlock?
Yeah. So I have always been quite a big Sherlock Holmes fan. I think because it is one of those iconic characters that sort of... This is going to sound bad. I've never read
Nah.
a Sherlock
No one
Holmes
has.
book or short story.
No one has since 1899.
No. So my friend, my good friend Alex recently bought me the sort of compendium, and it's really nice and it's hardback and it's all glossy and lovely. And so because I've said it for ages, I do want to read them, and so I will. But it's one of those things that as a kid you're aware of, even if you haven't read them, even if you haven't seen a film or a TV show. You're just Sherlock Holmes is like Dracula or Frankenstein or something, where you're just aware of it.
I just wondered with Father Christmas, what age do you suddenly be aware of things like Sherlock Holmes?
No clue. It's one of those things that I've known about for longer than I
memory exists.
Than cogent thoughts were in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've never known a time that I didn't know who or what Sherlock Holmes was.
Okay, well, we'll start with the beers. There's a reason we got this, as it will become apparent later.
It was a last minute arrival. We weren't sure if it would arrive in time for the recording session.
Arrived today. We do make an effort. We ordered this in advance from the Wild Beer Company. This is Brett Double IPA.
Brit.
Some of you will know why we've got that already. If not, you'll find out later. So
Cheers. Brett.
Good IPA, that.
Hoppy. I like that.
Yeah. So Sherlock Holmes. We're not going to really delve into the character. As
everyone knows who Sherlock Holmes is.
Holmes is.
We're not going to sit here and go, oh, Sherlock Holmes, for those of you who don't know, is a consulting detective from
Exactly.
221B Baker Street.
If you don't
knows.
know, I think you've stumbled upon this podcast by accident, and you should be.
I think you've
watching Love Island or something.
I think you've stumbled upon life by accident.
Where have you been?
How do you not know who Sherlock Holmes is?
Yeah. But he is the most portrayed literary character in film and TV history, having appeared on screen apparently 254 times as of 2012.
I thought it was Dracula.
Well, this is what it says on Wikipedia, mate.
All right.
Maybe he's overtaken it.
I reckon it's pretty... No vampire pun intended.
Yeah.
Neck and neck.
Do you know what it is? I think it's that thing of... With Dracula, some of them are like, is that the same thing? Is it Nosferatu? Is that the same thing? Do you know what I mean? But with Sherlock Holmes, it's Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, and then there's Dracula 2000 with Gerard Butler that people pretend doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's don't worry about that, it doesn't count.
My particular first introduction to Sherlock Holmes was, of all things, the computer game.
Interesting.
I'm annoyed that I didn't bring it up in the point and click adventure episode because it's one of my favourite point and click games of all time.
And this episode is all about ranking the screen Sherlocks.
Yeah.
So we won't be talking about it here either.
No.
So
I just want to put a shout out. Have you ever played Case of the Rose Tattoo? An old MS-DOS game with well, here's a clip. See what you think of this.
All right.
5 million souls in London, Watson, and not one of them needs my services. An entire week without work. It's intolerable. Absolutely unendurable. Perhaps I can find something diverting in my room. At least I'll escape your censorious glances.
Holmes, I protest. Your personal habits are no concern of mine.
Enter.
This just came for you, Mr. Holmes. By bonded messenger, no less.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. You are a treasure. Hello, it's from my brother. This is most welcome.
Please join me at the Diogenes. I require your energy, judgment, and discretion. M. A rather brief note to elicit such a smile. Whatever can he want?
Who knows? He's as furtive as a Freemason and as ingenious as Babbage. But a chat with Mycroft at his club is sure to be diverting. He may have work, or he may need help identifying a rare tobacco. Grab your hat, Doctor. We're off to one of the queerest spots in London.
Interesting.
Yeah. Don't really translate to audio because you have to be watching it, but it's one of those...
Like so many of the clips we play.
It's just one of those games where it had like stupidly long text screens because it's all like exposition because they couldn't really do much with it at the time. But, you know, still to this day, thoroughly good. What we're going to do in this episode is we've picked...
We should explain.
We've picked 6 actors who have played Sherlock Holmes over the years.
For those of you who listened to and no doubt enjoyed our ranking the Scrooges episode, which was last Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas.
This is going to follow a similar format. We're going to rank the Sherlocks.
Yeah. So we'll do all 6 and then we'll rank them at the end.
Yeah.
But before that, I just thought we'd go through other people who haven't made the cut of our list of lots of different actors, because so many actors have played over the years. I've got a big long list. I don't know about what you've got.
So I've got a few. It's a shorter list. Shall I go through mine?
You go for yours.
All right. So ones I want to give a Sherlock shout out to.
Honourable mentions.
Honourable mentions include Nicholas Rowe in Young Sherlock Holmes from 1985, which was kind of a little bit like, it should have been a franchise. Definitely should have been a franchise. It was a bit sort of Harry Potter-esque.
All right. So like young Indiana Jones sort of thing.
Yeah, but good. Yeah.
Your name is James Watson. You're from the north of England. Your father is a doctor. You spend a considerable amount of leisure time writing, and you have a particular fondness for custard tarts. Am I correct?
My name isn't James, it's John.
Oh, James John, what's the difference?
One of my all-time favourite actors, Christopher Plummer. He played Sherlock in Murder by Decree from 1979, in which Holmes hunts Jack the Ripper. Very cool.
He seems to take a delight in keeping his subjects waiting. I suppose, since after all he's only the Prince of Wales, we should not expect the same degree of courtesy.
And since you're only the Prince of Detectives, Holmes, I don't think you should presume to criticize a man who one day will be the King of England.
Well done, Watson. You cut me to the quick. Only the Prince of Detectives, you say? Then pray tell me, who is the King?
Lestrade, of course.
Who else? Tom Baker.
Wow.
Played.
Hamming it up, surely. To the nines.
What else? He played Sherlock in a 1982 adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles. That was just after he left Doctor Who. I think it was like certainly the next major thing he did on television.
Well, Watson, what do you make of it?
How did you know what I was doing? You must have eyes in the back of your head.
I have at least a highly polished coffee pot in front of me.
And something, we did talk about this way back in 2 Geeks episode 4, the Defenders of the Earth episode.
Oh yeah.
Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
Didn't have a really good theme tune.
Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
They fit it in.
Over and over and over again. Let's have a little blast of it now, come on.
Sherlock Holmes.
Bring Sherlock Holmes back to life. Back to life.
It's elementary, my dear Watson.
Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
Yeah, so that may well have been
your favourite.
not my favourite. Well, my childhood favourite. It was one of my very first, as you said, sort of exposures to Sherlock Holmes. And it was for anyone who didn't listen to the previous episode, this was a late 90s animation where a revived Sherlock and a robot Watson fight a clone Moriarty in the 22nd century.
But things like this don't get made anymore. That was fantastic.
Lack of imagination. Great show. Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. It's on mostly on YouTube, I think, if you want to track it down. There was also on the sort of cartoon route, there was a really great animated version of The Hound of the Baskervilles that I loved as a kid, and I had it on VHS, called Sherlock Holmes and the Baskerville Curse, which was produced in Australia, weirdly, in 1983, and it had Peter O'Toole as Sherlock Holmes.
May I present Dr. Watson, a professional brother to you, a vital assistant to me.
How do you do? I desperately need your help.
In what respect?
Your fame as a great unraveller of mysteries has spread even to the backwaters of Devon, Mr. Holmes, and I have a problem that needs a man of your intellect to resolve.
Describe this problem.
3 months ago, a very good friend of mine, Sir Charles Baskerville, was killed under very suspicious circumstances.
I read the coroner's report in the newspaper. I thought he decided the causes were natural and that you...
That I was seeing not just pink elephants, but also ghostly hounds the size of Shetland ponies.
I love O'Toole in that. Just pure icy cool.
What I like about it is that it sounds at first that he's just not giving a shit and just sort of phoning it in, but then you think, oh no, he's doing it on purpose.
He's doing that.
Do you know what I mean? He's so slick.
He's so laconic and lazy. It's on purpose. Describe this problem.
Describe this problem.
I also, and this is another one I really, really loved as a kid, I have a real soft spot for the 2002 version of The Hound of the Baskervilles, starring Richard Roxburgh and Ian Hart. And I think it was because it was the first big budget, like proper modern as in, you know, made at the time, TV version of Sherlock Holmes that I had ever seen.
It's dead, Holmes. I'll never forgive myself.
It's my fault, boss. In order to complete my case, I've thrown away the life of my client.
We must send for help. Can't carry him all the way to the hall. Good God, Holmes, are you mad?
Look at the hands. It's the convict, Selden.
These are Sir Henry's clothes. Are you coming up to the house?
I see no need for further concealment now. Just one thing. Say nothing of the hound to Sir Henry. Let him think Selden died from a fall. He will have a better nerve for the ordeal he will have to undergo.
What ordeal?
Come on.
Yeah, really good.
And it's why is Hound of the Baskervilles the one that they like to adapt more than most, would you say?
It's an odd one because Hound of the Baskervilles barely has Sherlock Holmes in it. It's famous for being a story in which he doesn't really feature that heavily, and Dr. Watson is the lead. I think it's just... You know, there's lots of great Sherlock Holmes stories, says the man who hasn't read them, but has seen lots of TV adaptations.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is the coolest one. It's on Dartmoor, the Misty Moors. There's a giant killer dog.
Yeah.
It's the most kind of evocative and interesting, I think, and it's got a cool name. But they did a sequel to that Hound of the Baskervilles 2 years later. Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Silk Stocking. So you still had Ian Hart as Watson, but they had Rupert Everett as Holmes. Not as good. Not as good.
You think he'd be great?
Yeah, he seems like a more natural fit than Richard Roxburgh, who's an Australian actor who's mostly in sort of B-movie trash, but was fantastic. Underworld. Fantastic in that. I said #Justice for Roxburgh. I'm going to tweet about this afterwards. Justice for Roxburgh. And then of course there's Elementary with Johnny Lee Miller, which is
still going.
Fine. It's fine.
When that first got announced, I was furious. Because I was just like, really? Do you have to make this? You've already got Sherlock. You don't need to make it.
I'm sure Stephen Moffat felt the same way, and Mark Gatiss.
What season is it in now? Like 7 or
6 or 7. Do you know what it is though? It's fine.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched it?
No.
Perfectly serviceable.
Yeah. I like Lucy Liu.
And Johnny Lee Miller's quite good in it.
Yeah.
He's quite good. You sort of feel like if he was in Sherlock, he'd be getting all the fan love. He's good in it. It's just... It's your typical American procedural, and they've just sort of stuck Sherlock Holmes in. And so, you know, you come home at the end of the day at work, you stick on an episode of Elementary, perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable. Not shit, but not great.
This fall, stop. Holmes and Watson are back.
A bit excessive, don't you think?
There's more to this than meets the eye.
That was someone else.
You're a liar who lies.
He got off one shot before he took his wound.
Kudos, Watson. Adequately done.
Elementary returns. CBS Thursdays this fall.
Well, I'm just going to reel off a big list of other actors who've done it, just to show that we've had to pick 6, and you've already listed some really great ones, and now we've got. I mean, I haven't seen these, so they might all be shit. But the actors, the pedigree of the actors alone makes you go, Jesus.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes is a massive deal that all these guys are playing him.
I mean, you may have gathered by now that Two Geeks, Two Beers is a fairly ad hoc affair, but we actually did prep for this episode. Yeah. We had to sort of take the long list of Sherlock candidates and whittle it down.
Yeah. So here's just a list of people, some of which you might not have realised played Sherlock. So some of them on radio, some on stage, whatever. So Orson Welles back in the day, John Gielgud, Robert Powell, you can imagine him doing it. Wow. Roy Hudd.
Roy Hudd?
Yeah. Nicholas Briggs, your mate, he did it on audio.
For Big Finish.
Yeah, he did.
We haven't given Big Finish a shout out in a while. They're going to stop giving us the backhanders.
Leonard Nimoy did it on stage.
Yeah, well, I'm going to come back to that later.
Okay, good. Frank Langella, great actor. Charlton Heston, amazing. Ron Moody.
Oh, Ron! I love Ron Moody.
Yeah,
he was a Doctor Who that never was.
John Cleese did it for the Comedy Playhouse, a bit of a comedy turn. Ian Richardson, Edward Woodward, Christopher Lee, Patrick Macnee, Matt Frewer of
Max Headroom fame.
Jonathan Pryce, Michael York did it in Tom and Jerry.
Has Michael York never
Basil
done
Exposition.
Has he never done it in live action?
It might have done.
Because, not that I remember it, but he would be great.
He would be great.
He'd be great. Let him do it properly.
Boris Karloff at some point. Peter Cook, and then Ian McKellen did it in that recent Mr. Holmes. And this is the thing, because you'd think by now we would have just rinsed Sherlock Holmes so much that there's no more adaptations. But that came out a couple of years ago. Holmes and Watson, a comedy starring Will Ferrell as Holmes, is coming out.
Can't wait for that.
And Sherlock Gnomes. The recent animation film.
I can't believe you omitted Basil the Great Mouse Detective from that list.
Exactly.
Holmes inspired and featuring the voice of Basil Rathbone, who we'll be getting onto later.
From Walt Disney Pictures, it's adventure.
We've not a moment to lose.
It's excitement.
Basil, look out!
And it's coming your way. It's the adventures of the Great Mouse Detective.
Smile, everyone.
He's Basil of Baker Street.
Amazing.
And he's teaming up with Toby, Dawson, and little Olivia to take on Ratigan, the world's biggest rat.
What did you call me? You're a slimy, contemptible sewer rat.
This spring, you're invited to join the fun with Walt Disney's classic, The Adventures of the Great Mouse Detective.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to start with Basil Rathbone. I think.
Go on then.
So we've got three each, and it makes sense to start with not the original, but the original big man, I'd say. the man who made Holmes who he is today, I reckon, in terms of he brought it to a massive audience.
If Basil Rathbone was still with us today, I bet he'd be thrilled to know he's been described as the original big man. Original big man Basil.
So if you don't know who Basil Rathbone is, he was a South African-born English actor. He rose to prominence in the UK as a Shakespearean stage star and went on to appear in more than 70 films, normally costume dramas or swashbucklers, and sometimes horror films. He was also a distant cousin, which is amazing for me, Major Henry Rathbone, who was present at the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and was seriously wounded trying to stop John Wilkes Booth.
Basil was?
No, not Basil.
Oh, Henry.
Henry was. He was just a cousin of this guy.
I love it.
Your earnest face there, like, Basil? My boy Basil?
I just love the idea of John Wilkes Booth is about to assassinate Abraham Lincoln and Sherlock Holmes charges in.
A bit before his time, but so, and then just a bit more facts about Basil Rathbone, because I don't know when else we're going to talk about Basil Rathbone.
I don't know.
So following his brother's death in World War I, Rathbone, apparently he sort of became a bit, because he was serving as well, he apparently just became a bit of a hard nut because of that. He was hardened because his brother died.
Again, what was it? Number one big man and hard nut, Basil Rathbone.
He became unconcerned about the dangers of serving at the front. Author Richard Van Emden speculated that his extreme bravery may have been a form of guilt or need for vengeance. He persuaded his superiors to allow him to scout enemy positions during daylight rather than at night, which is the usual custom. He wore a special camouflage suit that resembled a tree with a wreath of foliage on his head, and just went for it.
Why has no one made a film of that?
I know.
Because you get all these films and TV movies about Ian Fleming, and they always try and make it seem like he's James Bond. He wasn't James Bond.
Yeah. Rathbone.
Whereas Rathbone sounds like a badass.
As a result of these highly dangerous daylight reconnaissance missions, in September 1918, he was awarded the Military Cross for conspicuous daring and resource on patrol. So even before he was known as a person, he was a big deal. He died of a heart attack in New York in 1967, aged 75. And I just wanted to play, before we get into Sherlock territory, this advert, as we're doing, is it 2 Geeks, 2 Beers? He was in an advert for beer.
Amazing.
Later in his career, and it's fantastic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In case we haven't met before, I am Basil Rathbone. You're just in time to see a first-run feature picture presented by the makers of Lisey's Light Beer. In commemoration of Lisey's 90th anniversary, Each week at this time, the Lycée Premier Theatre will present a distinguished motion picture. These outstanding films have been especially selected for your pleasure. But first, here is something else for your pleasure.
What a suave dude he is.
I don't know if Liza's beer, whatever it's called, still exists. I should have tried to get that instead. But there you go.
Here is something else for your pleasure.
Cheers. To Basil. We're still drinking beer in your honour. So, Rathbone was best known for playing suave villains.
He was Guy of Gisborne.
Yes, he was.
Opposite Errol Flynn.
In The Adventures of Robin Hood. And he was also Mr. Murdstone in David Copperfield in 1935. But his most famous role was heroic. It was at that of Sherlock Holmes in 14 Hollywood films made between 1939 and 1946, and in a radio series as well.
What I liked about these films, because I've seen not all of them, but a few of them. They're quite often on like Bank Holiday Mondays.
Yeah.
And what I like about them, they all start, or a lot of them start, with a shot of him and Nigel Bruce as Watson, and it always goes like bum bum bum. It's like, yeah, they are the boys. It's a great little shot that opens all of the movies.
Well, talking of Nigel Bruce, I just want to give him a shout out as well, because again, I don't know when we're going to talk about Nigel Bruce again. He was also remembered for his roles in a few Alfred Hitchcock films, including Rebecca and Suspicion. He starred as Watson in all 14 films of the series and over 200 radio programmes of The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Although Watson often appears to be the older of the two main characters, Bruce was actually 3 years younger.
Was he?
Would you believe? Tough paper round for my boy Bruce. For most viewers, Nigel Bruce formed their vision of what you imagine Dr. Watson to be.
Bumbling.
But Holmes purists have long objected that the Watson of the books was intelligent and capable, like Martin Freeman is in the later series, which we'll get onto later. Bruce's portrayal made Watson far sort of dimmer and, as you say, bumbling than his original.
There's always there's two words that are used to describe Watson. It's always Nigel Bruce, bumbling, and then Martin Freeman, capable, innit? It's always bumbling and capable.
Yeah.
Capable is not like a great, not heroic. It's not a great word. It's almost like, how is he at his job?
He's capable.
He's
alright.
He gets by.
Rathbone, however, spoke highly of Bruce's portrayal, saying that Watson was one of the screen's most lovable characters. Bruce died of a heart attack in 1953, aged 58, so quite young. So Rathbone starred in a series of 14 films, as I say. The first 2 films in the series were produced by 20th Century Fox and released in 1939. The studio stopped making the films after these, but Universal acquired the rights from the Doyle estate and produced a further 12 films. Although the films from 20th Century Fox had large budgets, high production values, and were set in the Victorian era, Universal updated the films to have Holmes fighting the Nazis and produced them as sort of B-movies with lower budgets. Both Rathbone and Bruce continued their roles when the series changed studios.
But that is the equivalent of now doing Sherlock.
Yeah.
Because that was, at the time, Sherlock Holmes in the modern day, having him in the 40s.
So quite forward-thinking.
Very forward-thinking.
Yeah. So here's, I think this is made recently, but here's a trailer of the Rathbone era films.
Basil's best bits.
Yeah.
When a puzzling murder takes place, only one man can solve the mystery.
Elementary, my dear Watson. Purely elementary.
And when super sleuth Sherlock Holmes is on the case, no criminal is safe.
I've decided to accept your case, Miss Brandon. I shall help you all I can.
No job is too big.
This is no childish prank, Miss Brandon, but a cryptic warning of avenging death.
No clue too small.
You think these are the footprints of a murderer? It's possible.
No criminal too clever for the amazing Sherlock Holmes.
You're the one man in England clever enough to defeat me.
Playhouse Video presents The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Just one episode in a chilling series of murder and mayhem.
Somewhere in London at this very moment, something tremendous is happening.
Don't miss the madness as Holmes and Watson solve one mystery after the next.
Ready when you are.
The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Only from Playhouse Video.
Elementary, my dear Holmes. Elementary.
The boys.
For
those who've never seen Basil Rathbone, how would you describe how he looks? It's sort of like
Sherlock Holmes. It is ridiculous. It's like, what else were you going to do?
Yeah.
He's kind of got that kind of like hawkish nose and the slit back hair. And the kind of the cheekbones. He just looks like Sherlock Holmes.
Just as an aside, similar to sort of the royal family and say A Christmas Carol, certain very British things that Americans are obsessed with is Sherlock Holmes. They just adapt it all the time, and it's not their history. Do you know what I mean? They love it. Christmas Carol, they do all the time. They do all the time.
It's not yours.
Yeah,
leave it alone.
We do. Anyway, in the 1970s, 4 of the Universal produced films fell into the public domain when their copyright was not renewed. These 4 films were restored and colorized. Some of the films in the series have become degraded over time, with some of the original negatives lost, like The Light Lads all over again.
Oh, we'll get onto that again later as well, when things are wiped and junked.
And others apparently suffering from nitrate deterioration because
can
of
happen.
the unstable celluloid nitrate film. The UCLA Film and Television Archive restored the series, putting the film into modern polyester, as you do, in a process that was jointly paid for by UCLA, Warner Brothers, and Hugh Hefner. The Hef bloody loved these series.
He loved a bit of Rathbone.
So as soon as he heard that they were being restored, but they needed a bit more money, he was like, "Oh, guys, I will help you out." So in terms of how Basil came into being cast as Holmes, in 1938, Gregory Ratoff and Gene Markey, they were sort of producers, they made the choice of Rathbone after having a conversation at a party in Hollywood. When asked who could possibly play Holmes, they were going, who could do it? Markey apparently incredulously replied, "Who? Basil Rathbone." Obviously.
Obviously Rathbone.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? What are you talking about?
My boy Rathers. I was going to say boners, but it doesn't really work, does it? So I tried to look for clips on YouTube. There's a few on there. And there's a great one of Holmes versus Moriarty, like the original face-off, and it gets quite tense.
Now, Holmes, what will it be? The gas chamber, the cup of hemlock, or just a simple bullet through your brain?
You disappoint me, Professor.
Indeed?
Yes. Somehow I always thought that in the end, you'd prove to be just an ordinary cutthroat.
You know me better, Holmes.
Gas, poison, bullets. I assure you, Professor, were our positions reversed, I should have something more colorful, more imaginative to offer.
I'm satisfied to be the winner. I shall be alive.
Alive, yes. The winner, no. For in the last analysis, I shall have proved the more resourceful man. You didn't trap me here. I came here because I wanted to prevent your getting Hoffner. And all you can do in return is to commit ordinary murder to relieve your sense of frustration.
And what, my good Mr. Holmes, could you have conceived that would have been so much more colorful?
Well, even offhand, I can improve upon your suggestions considerably, but that's only natural, of course.
And what is this brilliant idea of yours?
You know that a man dies if he loses 5 pints of blood? Yes, of course you do. I should have you placed on an operating table, inject a needle into your veins, and slowly draw off your life's blood.
The needle to the last. Eh, Holmes?
Slowly, drop by drop, the blood would be drawn from your body. You would be aware of every exquisite second to the very end. You would be watching yourself die scientifically, noting every reaction, and in full possession of your faculties.
Interesting.
Yes, isn't it? I humbly submit, Professor, that to the very end, I've been more resourceful than yourself.
Bit dark.
What I like is Rathbone. He just sort of goes. He does him in. He goes, "You're just a shit villain, Moriarty. Come on,
I've had you."
Yeah, it's like he's like Michael Caine as Nigel Powers in Austin Powers 3, where he's just
come
like,
on, son, just
yeah. He's like, "You don't even have a name tag. Come on, son, just like that, just like that." That's what Rathbone's doing, psyching him out.
Do you know who I am? Have you any idea how many anonymous henchmen I've killed over the years? And look at you, you haven't even got a name tag. You've got no chance. Why don't you just fall down? Go on, son.
So in 2nd October 1939, Rathbone and Bruce resumed their roles, as I say, on radio. The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, with episodes written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher. Rathbone left the series, though, in May 1946, but Bruce remained for another year, and Tom Conway replaced Rathbone. Now, Universal decided to update the stories, as I say, to a Second World War setting, bringing it to the modern day at the time. The first film, Sherlock Holmes and the Voice of Terror, based on Doyle's 1917 story His Last Bow, saw Holmes attempting to capture a Nazi agent. The change of era for Holmes is explained in the opening titles, The caption informs viewers that Holmes is ageless, invincible and unchanging, going on to say that he was solving significant problems in the present day. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. I'm going to just do that now, just a massive leap in time. Yeah, he's invincible, don't worry about it.
He's just been living forever.
He's just awesome.
Rathbone, though, became frustrated with the role and left the series in 1946. He stated that his first picture was, as it were, a negative from which I merely continued to produce endless positives of the same photograph. Universal considered replacing him on screen with Tom Conway, as they did on radio, but instead decided to end the series despite still having the rights for the next 3 years. And you can actually watch pretty much every single film on YouTube. It's just, they're all there. So it's a treasure trove of Rathbone wonderness. And I thought I'd end the Rathbone section with just an amusing clip.
Well, Mrs. Courtney, so we meet again. No, I shouldn't do that if I were you, Colonel Cavanaugh.
I must congratulate you, Mr. Holmes. You're far more clever than I thought.
Thank you, Mrs. Courtney. Praise from you is indeed gratifying. I shall always cherish the memory of your flattering words.
Memory? Oh, thank you.
And now I have a most regrettable task to perform.
Holmes! Coming, Holmes! Holmes! You all right?
Perfectly, thank you, old fellow, but I think this gentleman on the floor requires some medical attention. We will see that he looks his best, you know, when he's hanged.
The guy throws a knife at him and he shoots him at the same time, but for some reason the knife misses, even though that wouldn't make any sense. Cause
Sherlock shot first.
Yeah. So that's Mr. Rathbone for you.
I love that idea, though, of sort of transposing Sherlock Holmes into different eras, because, as I was saying, he's kind of like Dracula or one of those iconic characters. He sort of exists outside of the original stories because he's so well known. And so I would love to see some kind of like anthology where different filmmakers and writers got to do their own version of Sherlock Holmes, but in like different time periods and stuff. So you could have like, obviously we've had, the Rathbone movies in the 40s and Sherlock in the modern day, but you could do like, what would Sherlock be like in the 60s? What would Sherlock be like in the 80s?
Yeah.
Wall Street Sherlock,
Yeah.
I think, that could be really interesting.
Well, everything else gets commissioned, might as well.
Why not?
Yeah.
Come on.
So, on to you next. Who have you got first?
Right. You started off strong with Rathbone, a little bit unfair. But I have, I think, a strong retort in Peter Cushing.
Ooh. See, I don't have much knowledge of the Cushing era.
Right. So Cushing, again, a bit like Rathbone, he looked like he was just sort of born to play Sherlock because he's got cheekbones and a long nose. That's what you need.
That's all you need.
You need the long hawkish nose and cheekbones.
You want to look like Richard E. Grant, essentially. Even though did he ever do it? I don't think he ever did.
I feel like he must.
He should have done.
He feel like someone who should have done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cushing, like Rathbone, like Richard E. Grant, looks the part, sounds the part.
Yeah.
He was also a big fan of the original stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who I don't even think we've given a shout out to yet. So.
Oh yeah, sorry Doyle.
sorry Doyle.
It's kind of down to you.
Sort of key.
Pathetic. What are we doing?
Sorry, we had a beer beforehand. So Cushing heavily researched his role, taking care to incorporate the sleuth's well-known addiction to morphine into his physical appearance and behaviour. He even apparently provided his own costumes, which accurately matched the illustrations accompanying Conan Doyle's original stories in the Strand magazine, because the Sherlock Holmes stories were published in the Strand, accompanied by illustrations by Sidney Paget. Shout out to Paget. So Cushing first played it in 1959 in another big screen version of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
I've heard of this.
Heard of Hound of the Baskervilles? I've heard of that one.
Know then the legend of the Hound of the Baskervilles. Take heed, and beware the moor in those dark hours when evil is exalted, else you will surely meet the Hound of Hell, the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Which way? For heaven's sake, which way?
The greatest story ever written by one of the world's greatest storytellers, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic masterpiece of mystery, suspense, and horror, The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Some revolting sacrificial rite has been performed. What depths a human being can sink to.
What human being could have done this?
That is precisely what I intend to find out.
How can you be so certain that somebody took one of the bishop's spiders and deliberately placed it in Sir Henry's room? That it wasn't in the luggage he brought from South Africa?
Elementary, my dear Watson. There are no tarantulas in South Africa.
What do you want me to do?
Identify anything I may find. Strange things are to be found on the moor. Like this, for instance.
Why? You thought it was going to be easy, didn't you? Didn't you? You won't be the first of your family who thought that. And you won't be the first to die because of it.
Great.
A new and exciting Sherlock Holmes, said the caption. I love that where he's like, interesting things are to be found on the moors.
Like this!
Like this! Have it! Bloody
It's a
have it!
knife! Take it!
Take it, have it!
Bloody hell.
So this was definitely the first film adaptation of the novel Hound of the Baskervilles to be filmed in colour. I've also seen some sort of rumblings that it might have been the first ever Sherlock Holmes movie to be filmed in colour, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Do you think at the time it was like James Bond in a way, that they'd had the Rathbone movies and then Cushing came along and they sort of thought of it as a same thing? Do you know what I mean?
Possibly.
It wasn't that long after.
Yeah.
It was like 10 years or so.
Far out, far more.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes is back. So the Hound of the Baskervilles co-starred Andre Morel as Watson. He's also known for playing Professor Quatermass in the BBC's 1950s version of Quatermass in the Pit. You might do a future episode on
Yeah, that would be a good one.
There you go. So this film was directed by the great Terence Fisher, who also helmed Hammer's classic versions of Dracula and Frankenstein, both of which also starred Cushing and Christopher Lee, who appears in this film as Sir Henry Baskerville. And also, as you mentioned, he played Holmes himself on TV and film, as well as Mycroft in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, which we'll get onto later. And his performance as Mycroft in that movie was cited by Mark Gatiss as inspiring his own Mycroft in Sherlock. So this is like a spooky but also sort of cosy Hammer horror. It genuinely ends with Holmes and Watson enjoying tea and muffins. Elementary, my dear Watson. Elementary.
And then...
Muffin. Literally, the final line of the film
they freeze frame
muffin.
with the credits. That police squad.
Pouring the tea.
Yeah.
And Cushing, he's great, but he's quite a cuddly, lovable Holmes. He's not as severe as some other versions. But this film holds a 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Beat that. Time Out, as well, called it the best Sherlock Holmes film ever made. Hammer had apparently planned to shoot several Sherlock Holmes films with Cushing, but they abandoned the idea because at the time their horror output, I mean this has horror tinge to it, but the Draculas, the Frankensteins, the Mummies, these were doing the business for Hammer at the time, and it was felt that people wanted to see more of those movies, so they scrapped plans for a Sherlock film series, which is a shame because this movie is really, really strong. And Cushing himself apparently considered Sherlock Holmes to be his favourite role.
Wow. Not Grand Moff Tarkin.
Grand Moff Tarkin. No. And not, Frankenstein, which is, as in, the
actual Frankenstein.
The scientist, not the monster. Not that. No, he loved a bit of Sherlock. So 9 years later, Cushing got to play the part again.
Good.
In 1968. He took over from Douglas Wilmer in the BBC's 1960s series Sherlock Holmes for the second series. So Wilmer, who played the part in the first series, he left. Other people who were considered to replace him included John Neville, who'd played Holmes in the 1965 film A Study in Terror, and Eric Porter, who didn't get the part, but he later played Moriarty opposite Jeremy Brett as Holmes, who we'll get onto later. Cheers, Brett.
Brett.
So Cushing appeared in 16 episodes of Sherlock Holmes, including a 2-part adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles. This time with Nigel Stock as Watson. Now, again, I've not verified this, but he's, what do you expect? But he's got to be surely the only Holmes actor to have done the same story twice.
Yeah.
So here's a quick clip from Cushing's second stab at Hound of the Baskervilles.
I think I have deserved better at your hands than this, Holmes. My dear friend, I beg you to forgive me if I seem to have played a trick upon you. But it was partly for your own sake. If you had known I was here, you might have wished to tell me something or bring me some comfort or other. It would have been at the risk of your life. And it was vitally important that our opponent should believe that I had remained in London. Well, surely there's no need for this secrecy between you and me. What is the meaning of all this? What is happening? It is murder, Watson. Refined, cold-blooded, deliberate murder. But all those reports I sent you wasted. Far from it. I made excellent arrangements for them to reach me. I have them here, and they are well found, I assure you. Well, take heart, Watson. At least between us, we found out who our murderer is. You know who it is? Oh, yes, I know. But knowing is not proof. Nevertheless, I beg you to tell me. Gladly. Even though your reports, which you have so painstakingly compiled, shriek his identity to the heavens. Now think, my dear fellow, you yourself described how he... What in heaven's name is that? Quiet, shh.
I like the idea that Cushing was like, so, what are we doing this week? And they're like, Hound of the Baskervilles, Peter. The best one is, oh, no, again. Can I do this, Sign of 4, Valley of Fear, Red-Headed League. I'll take Red-Headed League. They're like, Peter, you're doing Hound of the Baskervilles again. Suck it up.
In that scene, you couldn't really see, but they were, as they were talking, just kept sharing each other's, hip flask.
Yeah.
Was that even in the script? Just getting through it.
Just passing the whiskey back and forth. It may well be, actually, because, as we'll discover. So... Unfortunately, you were talking about, lost films and that. Only 6 of Cushing's episodes survive. The rest have been wiped by the BBC.
Thinking? I don't get it. I know it was back in the 60s, and I know that it was a different time, but I can't believe at any point in the history of making things that they decided to go, don't worry about it, they won't want to see it again. What are you doing?
Well, there were no... I genuinely think... Make a little... someone asked me the other day, when you say future episode, you actually make a note. The true answer is sometimes. I think we should do an episode on
lost things.
Yeah, the junk episodes and the wiping. The lost archive. So there were no TV repeats didn't exist on TV. There was no such thing as home media release. There was no video or DVD. So when it was done, and they were just like, well, that's a waste. Let's tape over it.
But why tape over it though? Just
save money. So many episodes of Doctor Who, like many episodes of our favourite, The Likely Lads. A lot of the Cushing Sherlock Holmes doesn't exist anymore. But yes, they may well have been actually drinking. That's slander. Because Cushing apparently didn't enjoy making the show that much, even though he was a big fan of the character, because of production difficulties, including rehearsal and filming times being cut back severely, and scripts being delivered late. And apparently these were the same factors that had pushed Douglas Wilmer, who did it in the first series. He was like,
I've had enough of this.
I can't hack it, I'm gone. Cushing said, whenever I see some of these stories, they upset me terribly. Because it wasn't Peter Cushing doing his best as Sherlock Holmes. It was Peter Cushing looking relieved that he'd remembered what to say and said it. What I like about that is Peter Cushing refers to himself in the third person. But if anyone's going to refer to themselves in third person, he's allowed. He's Peter Cushing. But the experience didn't put him off entirely, because in 1984, age 71, Cushing played Sherlock Holmes one last time.
Good.
He played an older, semi-retired Sherlock in the 1984 TV movie The Masks of Death, which co-starred John Mills as Dr. Watson. And in this, Holmes investigates the connection between 3 mysterious deaths in London's East End and the imminent war between Britain and Germany.
When you have eliminated the impossible, Watson, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Remain here, within earshot of the telephone, if you please. Where are you going? This may take some little time. Do nothing unless you hear from me. Is that clear? When will you return? Should I send for you, there may be some little danger. So kindly put your service revolver in your pocket.
It is odd that Cushing was in his 70s there playing Sherlock Holmes, and it's added to this myth that Sherlock Holmes is an old bloke, and that him and Watson like these old blokes solving crimes, when actually they're not. In the original stories, they're meant to be a pair of young dudes. And I think they're meant to be younger than us. They're meant to be in their sort of late 20s.
Most people are younger.
Yeah, they're meant to be millennials when they first kick off. Executive producer Kevin Francis, who produced The Masks of Death, he had previously wanted to film a new version of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
For God's sake. Why? Just make...
Is it good? It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever.
We've seen it.
Yeah,
it's like when with Poirot. I can never say it.
Poirot.
Poirot.
At the moment.
You can't say it.
Poirot.
Him, Hercule. They love a bit of
Murder on the Orient Express
every single time. And if it's not that one, Death on the Nile. Because at the end of the latest Kenneth Branagh one, they're like, at the very end, they're like, we've got a new case for you. Where is it? The Nile? Yeah, the Nile. That's the only two films stories they can ever bother to make.
Come, Hastings, we have work to do. All has become clear.
It is like, Mr. Poirot. Mr. Poirot. Yes, what is it? There's been a death.
Where?
On the Nile. And then it's like, ba ba ba. Hercule Poirot will return.
That's what happened.
That's literally what happened. So, Kevin Francis, the executive producer, he had wanted to make Hound of the Baskervilles, which would have been Cushing's third time round.
Yeah.
And he had plans to feature a stop-motion dog, created though by Harry Rayhausen, that famous guy, created by Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, that guy.
Who famously did Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah.
But funding for the project collapsed, and later on he made Masks of Death. There were plans for a follow-up entitled The Abbot's Cry, but the film never materialised due to Peter Cushing's declining health, sadly. The Masks of Death was his final television appearance, and I think his penultimate credit. He was in a movie after that.
It's alright, you can just make a new one and just CGI him in the film like they did in Rogue One.
Or you can not do that because
it looks rubbish and it's obviously a CGI character and not a real actor and it's really silly and out of place.
Yeah. The real Peter Cushing passed away on August 11th, 1994 at the age of 81. Just to leave you with a bit of Cush trivia. Obviously, to play Sherlock Holmes, Cushing had to smoke a pipe. Didn't like the taste, couldn't stick it. So, he always had a glass of milk handy to remove the taste of tobacco after each shot. He was like, my milk. Or apparently a hip flask. And although I've reeled off all the times he played Sherlock Holmes, in 1976, Cushing also played the role of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in the TV movie The Great Houdini, with Paul Michael Glaser, Starsky of Starsky and Hutch, playing the title role.
Nice.
Yeah, because they were mates. In real life, Conan Doyle was mates with Houdini.
I thought you meant Cushing was mates with Starsky.
Well, possibly. Maybe they got on really well making the Great Houdini.
Yeah. No, wasn't that the show that you wanted to make and then they made it?
Yeah. So because I read that once and I was like, I'm sorry, Conan Doyle was best mates with Houdini.
Yeah.
So you do it as basically Sherlock Holmes, with Conan Doyle as like the Watson, and Houdini as Holmes. So he's like a crime-solving magician.
Yeah.
That sounds like a brilliant TV show.
And what do you do?
And then you make it. And
for Sky Atlantic, what was it?
No, it wasn't.
Was it even Sky Atlantic?
You wish it was Sky Atlantic. ITV Encore.
For God's sake. No one's going to watch it.
I'm Arthur Conan Doyle, this is Harry Houdini. Are you police officers? We're working with the police, yes.
Seeing a pattern yet?
There is something out there attacking people.
Fear's a good thing. I am never more alive than when I'm scared half to death.
Stephen Mangan, who played Conan Doyle in it, I interviewed him once and he said, I'll be honest, I didn't even know ITV Encore was a thing.
This is the thing, this is the problem. There's so many channels and things nowadays that, say Sherlock, which we'll get to later, that could have been chucked onto ITV Encore or something and no one will ever know.
Yeah.
For all we know, there are these incredible programmes out there that no one will ever watch because they're on stupid channels that no one has, like Crackle.
Oh, like Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman's show. What was it called?
What was it called?
The one with Adam Brody in it.
Yeah.
Startup,
which is some kind of thriller, some tech thriller, starring Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
He's in Sherlock and Marvel movies.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
He deserves better.
Adam Brody's come back, and it could have been really good. Might be really good. No one's ever seen it, so fuck it. They just make it and go, I feel like these actors sign up for these roles not knowing what channel it's going to be aired on.
Yeah.
And then they're like...
And, they're still getting to do their acting.
Yeah, they think,
so
this could be a really big hit.
Yeah.
What channels are going to be on? Oh, Crackle. You what, mate? No one ever watches
that. That really is just pissing money up the wall. So back to you on that note.
So I'm going into the future. We're going to go sort of Tarantino here. We're going to keep going back and forth into time. So I'm...
That's what Tarantino's known for, time travel.
No, like in Pulp Fiction when he goes back and forth.
Okay.
So we're going into Robert Downey Jr. territory now. And when we were like picking our 6, Robert Downey Jr. was an option, and you were like... But you have to put Robert Downey Jr. in.
Do you?
Yes, you do.
Convince me.
Right, okay. So... Because this is the thing, when the Robert Downey Jr. era of the Sherlock Holmes movies came out, it was only 1 year after his big comeback. The Downey Sonts?
The Danaissance.
Yeah. Iron Man came out in 2008.
Yeah.
And no one saw that coming.
No.
And then a year later, he did this.
Part of the problem. I'll get onto it.
So, it was before Sherlock arrived on TV.
Was it?
Yeah, 2009 this came out.
Yeah, year before.
So for me, the idea of Sherlock being sort of cool hadn't like been an idea since I was alive.
Did you not see Roxburgh?
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was all these like stuffy BBC dramas that no one watched.
I mean, looking back, Rathbone was actually the boy.
Oh yeah,
but
at the time when
you had the idea that Sherlock Holmes was stuffy. Yeah.
So the 2009 film, titled simply Sherlock Holmes, was directed by Guy Ritchie and written by Michael Robert Johnson, Anthony Peckham and Simon Kinberg. So 3 people wrote this. It was developed from a story by Lionel Rigram and Johnson. So loads of people were behind the writing of it. So Downey Jr. and Jude Law play Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson respectively. In the film, set in 1890, so it's not set in the present day, it's set back in the day that he was made. Eccentric detective Holmes and his companion Watson are hired by a secret society to foil a mysticist's plot to expand the British Empire by seemingly supernatural means. Ooh. Rachel McAdams stars as their former adversary Irene Adler, and Mark Strong, great guy, no one's favourite actor, portrays villain Lord Henry Blackwood. It received mostly positive reviews at the time. You know, people loved the story, the action sequences. It was very Guy Ritchie-esque. It was like it was of that sort of that era's sort of 300. Do you know what I mean? That kind of boom, slow motion fights and things like that. You know, it was very of its type. Hans Zimmer did the score, and you know Downey's performance at the time he still is the shit, but at the time he was very much the shit, and he won a Golden Globe Award for the role. Yes, and he was nominated. The film itself was nominated for 2 Oscars.
What?
It didn't win any.
Oh, what visual effects and that? Yeah, not real Oscars.
Here's a trailer for the original film.
All right.
I have a request. Someone I want to see. Sherlock Holmes. You and I are bound together on a journey that will twist the very fabric of nature. Allow me to enlighten you. Tomorrow, the world as you know it will end. Well, there isn't any time to waste then, is there? It does make a considerable difference to me having someone with me on whom I can thoroughly rely. It was nice to see you, Watson. Holmes, leave the case alone. Case for you. Save your bullets, Watson.
What was that about saving bullets?
First point of attack, right ear. 2, throat. 3, cracked ribs. In summary, neutralized. You've never complained about my methods before?
I never complain. When do I complain about you practicing the violin at 3 in the morning? Your general lack of hygiene or your experiment on my dog?
Just kill the dog. Again.
Get that out of my face. It's not in your face, it's in my hand. Get what's in your hand out of my face.
They've been flirting like this for hours.
Watson, you have the grand gift of silence. Makes you quite invaluable as a companion.
So as you were watching that, you were saying how much you loved it at the time.
I'd forgotten how many times I watched that trailer. I was really excited for that movie. And then
why didn't you like it?
It's fine. it has an amazing moment. There's a bit where Sherlock is messing around and he's trying to put Watson off. Yeah. I think getting with Mary Morstan because he wants them to stay the boys.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where Jude Law says, "Holmes, does your depravity know no bounds?" And he goes, "No." Really funny. The reason I'm not so keen on those movies is. It's clear, as you said, it was 1 year after Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. could do no wrong. He could do whatever the hell he liked. He was just like, Exactly. He was like, I want to play Sherlock Holmes, and they were like, all right. And when he plays Iron Man, yes, it's obvious he's having a lot of fun, and why wouldn't you? But I feel like he's also taking it seriously. He's making an effort. Like, end of Infinity War, spoilers, when it happens, he's like, he's gutted. He can't believe it. He's doing some acting. He's doing some acting. Sherlock Holmes, I think he's just
mucking about.
He's just mucking about. And like, I get it, that's fun, but I don't think you can argue he's like a great Sherlock Holmes. He's just sort of like doing Downey Jr. Plus which he does a bit in Iron Man, but he also does some proper acting.
And you can't can't do it the same every single time. You've got to try something different. But I wouldn't say he looks like you would imagine Sherlock Holmes to look like.
He's got cheekbones, doesn't have a hawkish nose.
Do you know what I mean?
Hawkish.
He's just
I'm looking for hawkish.
I mean, Jude Law looks more like Sherlock Holmes technically than Downey Jr. Anyway, Downey Jr. got the role because he was visiting Joel Silver producer's offices with his wife, producer Susan Downey, when he learned about the project. Guy Ritchie initially felt that Downey was too old for the role because he wanted the film to kind of show a younger Holmes.
As we were talking about.
It's sort of similar to Batman Begins. He was expecting it to be that kind of thing. But Ritchie decided to take a chance on casting him, and Downey later told the BBC, "I think me and Guy are well suited to working together. The more I look into the books, the more fantastic it becomes. Holmes is such a weirdo." Downey intended to focus more on Holmes's patriotic side and his bohemianism, and felt that his work on Chaplin had prepared him for an English accent. I think he did the English accent okay. I think he did alright.
It's fine. It's like, as an American doing a British accent is fine, but you never believe for a second it's an actual British accent.
Both Downey and Ritchie are martial arts enthusiasts and have been inspired by the baritsu mentioned in the 1903 story, The Adventure of the Empty House.
Well, Sherlock Holmes was into his fisticuffs.
Absolutely. And but Downey, he lost weight for the part. He had a chat with Chris Martin. Didn't explain why or where or what or whatever
of
Coldplay fame. And Martin recommended that Holmes looked gaunt and skinny. So he was like, "All right, Chris Martin, expert of Sherlock Holmes."
Is Chris Martin secretly like a Sherlock stan?
Apparently, yeah. So here's a typical scene from the film.
I'm terribly sorry to inconvenience you, sir. But I'm going to have to put this on you.
Mr. Holmes, apologies for summoning you like this. I'm sure it's quite a mystery as to where you are and who I am.
As to where I am, I was admittedly lost for a moment between Charing Cross and Holborn, but I was saved by the bread shop on Saffron Hill, the only baker to use a certain French glaze on their loaves, a Brittany sage. After that, the carriage forked left and right, a telltale bump of the fleet conduit. And as to who you are, that took every ounce of my not inconsiderable experience. The letters on your desk are addressed as Sir Thomas Rotherham, Lord Chief Justice, that'd be your official title. Who you really are is, of course, another matter entirely. Judging by the sacred ox on your ring, you're also the secret head of the Temple of the Four Orders, in whose headquarters we now sit, on the northwest corner of St. James Square, I think. As to the mystery, the only mystery is why you bothered to blindfold me at all.
Yes, well, standard procedure, I suppose.
Always annoys me with both this and like the latest Sherlock, is that they're almost like got superpowers. Do you know what I mean?
Superhero superpowers.
No one's like that. Anyway. Sorry, no matter how intelligent you are, it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. No. Law's Watson is more like the original character as compared to Nigel Bruce.
So capable.
Yeah,
he's capable. Very capable.
Is more of a colleague rather than the bumbling fool.
Bumbling.
Yeah. Law previously appeared in the Granada television series The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
He did.
In an episode based on the adventure of Shoscombe Old Place. Being a Holmes fan, Law recognised that there was material unexplored in other adaptations and was intrigued by Downey's casting. He was cast because he had a positive meeting with Downey and concurred that the film would have to explore Holmes and Watson's friendship. So sort of before the Freeman Cumberbatch thing, The Boys, this was very much the first sort of one to do The Boys like that.
Well, one of the things I will say about this version that I do like is that it does have Holmes and Watson as bros, as
There's
boys.
Lots of them bickering and being,
I feel like the best versions, even like Rathbone and Bruce, I feel like they kind of have a real friendship, and they're not just colleagues. Because sometimes when Watson is like super bumbling and useless, you're like, why is this guy
why are they hanging out with him?
And like Holmes is like a super smart dude.
Yeah.
Why is he hanging out with this idiot? And it's like, well, they're meant to be friends.
Yeah. Downey believed by emphasising Watson's qualities as a former soldier, a doctor, a womaniser and a gambler, it would make for a more interesting foil for Holmes. Law made a notebook of phrases from the stories to improvise his dialogue, so he made an effort. But Guy Ritchie, he originally envisioned Russell Crowe as Watson.
Watson?
Yeah. I would have killed to have seen that. That would have been amazing.
A weird choice. But I thought he might even...
No way would Crowe have been anyone's Watson. He would have been like, no, fuck you, I'm fucking Sherlock Holmes, mate. I'm no one's Watson.
What? He wanted to go young, didn't he? Russell Crowe. What are we thinking? Russell Crowe.
Making movies, making music and fighting round the world. Russell Crowe.
A sequel followed in 2011, Game of Shadows. Stephen Fry played Mycroft Holmes and Jared Harris was Moriarty.
Good.
It was fine. It wasn't as good.
No. I didn't think much of the first one, so...
The film followed an original premise, incorporating elements of Conan Doyle's short stories The Final Problem and The Empty House. In the film, Holmes and Watson travel across Europe with a gypsy adventuress to follow an intricate plot by their cunning nemesis, Professor Moriarty. Upon its release, the film received mixed reviews from critics, but was commercially successful, at a worldwide gross of $545 million, which is a lot, considering. Good. But did you know?
You're getting really wound up.
Did you know a sequel was coming? A third film. I didn't know this.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes 3.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes 3.
They literally just announced it
in December 2020.
Great.
So 9 years later, there's going to be a sequel, which great. But I don't think anyone's crying out for it.
Who's crying out for it?
Do you know what I mean?
It's like The Incredibles 2. Who's asking for that?
I think Downey Jr.'s presence, because he's still in the Avengers, he's still a big name.
The thing.
It will do well.
Every time a Marvel film rolls around, they go, oh yeah, he's still good.
Yeah.
Let's make another Sherlock Holmes movie. Also, if his Marvel contract runs out and he stops making Iron Man movies, what else are you going to do with him? Exactly. He might as well make more Sherlock Holmes.
Well, that's Downey Jr. for you. So you've made your opinions clear. So we'll come back to this later.
You sound like we've had a row. I think you made your opinions on Downey Jr. quite clear. So you've had your say. Now it's my turn.
Who you got next?
I'm glad you asked. Next up is Robert Stevens, who played the part in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes in 1970.
Billy Wilder, the man who gave you The Apartment and Some Like It Hot, now reveals The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. Dr. Watson in his lifetime recorded some 60 cases demonstrating the singular gift of his friend Sherlock Holmes. But there were other adventures which, for reasons of discretion, were withheld from the public. Adventures which involved matters of a delicate and sometimes scandalous nature. The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes was anything but elementary. Sherlock Holmes was a man of curious habits and eccentric tastes.
Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
Thoroughly. But this will take care of it.
And not always what he seemed to be.
You have described me as 6'4", whereas I'm barely 6'1".
Madame says you are shorter than she thought.
Oh, I didn't mean to be.
I hope I'm not being presumptuous, but there have been women in your life.
I thought I would never find you. It's been such a long time.
I found her body quite rewarding, especially the palm of her right hand.
Sherlock, when I said drop this case, it was not merely a suggestion, it was an order.
By whose authority?
By the authority of Her Majesty's government.
It took a genius to cover up Sherlock Holmes' vices, blunders, and bizarre tastes. Sherlock Holmes was a genius. The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes was anything but elementary.
title's a bit not the greatest.
Right.
And B, is it kind of like a greatest hits of Sherlock Holmes in one film?
Sort of. Well, not quite. So this is a sort of more comic take on Sherlock Holmes. It's almost at points almost like a parody.
He looked drunk.
Drunk?
Didn't he?
You don't want to talk. But it's, as I say, it's almost a parody.
Yeah.
But it also has more serious moments too, and it ends up as this kind of strange but quite compelling blend of comedy and tragedy. It was originally planned as a 3-hour epic. It was meant to be like a Sherlock Holmes anthology, so sort of a greatest hits, comprised of a number of different stories, but original stories. They were going to be presented as the scandalous tales that Watson never published. But the final film is divided into just 2 stories. Apparently, originally there were 2 other separate stories and another flashback sequence showing Holmes in his university days. They were all filmed, but they were later cut from the final release at the insistence of the studio, United Artists. And now, again, much of the cut material is thought to be lost. Billy Wilder, who directed the film and also made great films like Some Like It Hot and The Apartment, he said, I had tears in my eyes as I looked at the thing. It was the most elegant picture I've ever shot.
Wow.
As I said, it stars Robert Stevens as a slightly pompous, also quite romantic and very human Holmes. He got the part after Peter O'Toole, who voiced Holmes in the animation we discussed earlier. What is this problem? Stevens beat out O'Toole to the part. Stevens also later played Holmes on stage for 2 weeks in January 1976 in William Gillette's play Sherlock Holmes, before being replaced by Leonard Nimoy, who we mentioned earlier. So Billy Wilder, who wrote and directed the movie, he was a big Sherlock Holmes fan, apparently. He had been plotting a Sherlock Holmes project since 1957, originally planning a Holmes musical on Broadway starring Dr. Doolittle's Rex Harrison. So the final film is divided, as I said, into 2 stories, one much shorter than the other. In the first, Holmes is approached by a famous Russian ballerina, Madame Petrova, who proposes that they conceive a child together, one that she hopes will inherit her beauty and his intellect.
That's how it works.
That is how it works.
You get to select which bits go into what.
Holmes manages to extricate himself from the situation by claiming that Watson is his lover, much to the Doctor's embarrassment. Imagine if they'd done that in Sherlock. Can you imagine?
That wouldn't have... no.
It would have broken the internet, to use the modern parlance. But then in that's sort of like a little prologue, and then in the main plot of the film, a Belgian woman, played by Genevieve Page, is fished out of the River Thames and brought to Baker Street. She begs Holmes to find her missing engineer husband. The plot gets more and more complex, as we saw in that trailer, eventually involving dwarves, espionage, and the Loch Ness Monster.
I mean, the 3 things you want in a film.
In a Sherlock Holmes film, no doubt.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of an oddity, this film, but I don't feel like I'm quite doing it justice, sort of describing it. It is genuinely, it's very funny. It's also quite sort of melancholy. It has quite a heartbreaking ending, actually, as well. Empire magazine described it as the best Sherlock Holmes movie ever made. Mark Gatiss, of course, co-creator of Sherlock, he described it, along with the Basil Rathbone movies, as a template of sorts for his and Stephen Moffat's Sherlock.
This is, by a long way, my favourite Sherlock Holmes film. And really, although it's difficult to say what's your definitive favourite film, it's probably my favourite film. I think it sort of does everything I want a film to do. If this was on a bank holiday Monday, I would be very pleased. It has that kind of wintry afternoon feel. I saw it when I was very young, and it profoundly affected me. I think it's both a brilliant, respectful homage to Conan Doyle, and yet an incredibly irreverent take on it. It's Billy Wilder, who was one of the most sophisticated and brilliant filmmakers we've ever had, and it's Sherlock Holmes. It's a funny thing. I actually introduced this film about 3 or 4 years ago at a book festival, and I spent the whole time talking about how wonderfully melancholy it was. And then it started, and I thought, I'd forgotten, it's incredibly funny, which it is. And principally, I think, because it's, along with the Basil Rathbone films, it's the great influence on our TV series, because it's it's precisely as reverent as Conan Doyle was himself, i.e. not very. But at its absolute essence, Wilder and Izzy Diamond, who co-wrote the screenplay, they love Sherlock Holmes. And Wilder, I knew, grew up with the... I didn't know. He grew up with the stories as a boy in Austria and just was devoted to them. And he wanted to make a musical version, all kinds of things, and eventually it became this curious, huge film. One of the last of those sort of late 60s films. It was going to be a roadshow picture. It's lost an hour, as you may know. There's missing portions. But that's sort of part of its legend somehow, isn't it? It's sort of, the whole film was about loss. And the fact that there's actually a missing hour is kind of perfect. It's just, I just adore it.
So there you have it. That's Robert Stevens in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. It's maybe
a bit of a quirky one.
That's exactly the right word.
Yeah.
It's a more of a quirky entry.
But one you can't ignore.
But one you shouldn't ignore. Tom. One you shouldn't ignore. It's it's a more left field Holmes, but no less enjoyable or notable for it, I would argue.
Cool.
Back to you.
Well, you've just had Mark Gatiss talk about one of his favourites, and we're on to his influence on the Sherlock Holmes oeuvre.
Good use of the word oeuvre.
Benedict Cumberbatch, obviously, we couldn't ignore him, could we? So a year after Downey Jr.'s turn as Sherlock Holmes, the BBC announced a new series based on Sherlock Holmes set in the modern day. Now, I remember when I first heard about this, I remember thinking, judging from just its poster,
I was dreading it,
and I didn't really. I think I'd seen Cumberbatch in something, and he just looked ludicrous. And I loved Martin Freeman in The Office and everything. And I just looked at the whole poster and the idea of it, and just looked at it and went, "This is awful. What a stupid idea."
Well, the pitch was Sherlock Holmes in the modern day with Tim from The Office.
Nah.
Oh, by the way, for anyone listening to this podcast, just for the bit where we talk about Sherlock, this is the bit. This is the bit for the skippers. Yeah. This bit. Listen to this bit.
Yeah. Give this time frame to your friends.
Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
From now on.
Okay.
There we go.
So thoroughly won over, obviously, very soon after I watched it.
Really good.
Sherlock depicts he's a consulting detective, Sherlock Holmes, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, solving various mysteries in modern day London. Holmes is assisted by his new flatmate and friend, Dr. John Watson, played by Martin Freeman, who has returned from military service in Afghanistan with the Royal Army.
As the original Watson had.
As he did, yes. Yeah.
Turns out we're always fucking having wars in Afghanistan. And so that still works.
He's very capable, Watson.
He's very capable. He's not bumbling, he's capable.
Although police service detective inspector Greg Lestrade, played by the beautiful Rupert Graves.
That wasn't copied and pasted from Wikipedia. That was pure Eames. That was pure Tom Eames.
The gorgeous Rupert Graves. They at first are suspicious of Holmes, but over time his exceptional intellect and bold powers of observation persuade them of his value. In part through Watson's blog documenting their adventures, Holmes becomes a reluctant celebrity.
Documenting their adventures.
Yes, you heard. In part through Watson's blog, he's a reluctant celebrity with the press, reporting on his cases and eccentric personal life. I've had a beer and a half. Both ordinary people and the British government ask for his help. So, although the series depicts a variety of crimes and perpetrators, Holmes' conflict with nemesis Jim Moriarty is a recurring feature.
Aww.
Yeah. It's a very good impression. So, yeah, I mean, when this first came out, I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. And then when I saw it, it was one of those moments where you just go, it's really, really fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, really good.
I still think Study in Pink, the first episode, is one of the best.
Well, no, I loved it up until Phil Davis came along.
What's your problem with Phil Davis?
I have a problem with Phil Davis. I'm sure he's a great guy and a great actor in his own way, but I just...
Why did they not have Poldark then?
Yeah.
Slander.
Yeah. No, it was a fantastic intro to the series, although they had to reshoot the entire pilot, didn't they?
They did. It was originally they made an hour-long 60-minute pilot.
Yeah.
Well, that was another thing. What felt like a bad omen at the time, you know, with the sort of negative pre-buzz for Sherlock, was that they made a pilot and scrapped it, and I was like, this is going to be a disaster. It's going to lose the BBC money. And so that was a bold decision to make, but in the end it paid off. They decided to go for a sort of 90-minute sort of TV movie format, and it worked far better.
So, Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, Sherlock Holmes fans with experience of adapting or using Victorian literature for television, devised the concept of the series. Moffat had previously adapted Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the 2007 series Jekyll.
I want to stop you there. It's just because it's Moffat.
Is it?
Stephen
Is
Moffat.
it?
Only because
I always say Moffat.
I know. Only because he took me to task once because I used to say Moffat and Capaldi, Peter Capaldi, and he was like, "It's Capaldi, it's Capaldi," and
Alright.
I'm Moffat.
While we're here, is it Gatiss or Gattis?
Gatiss.
It's Gatiss.
Mark Gatiss. Stephen Moffat. Peter Capaldi.
So Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat.
So Gatiss and Moffat. Yep.
Moffat had previously adapted Dr. Jekyll and Hyde.
That's your first one. I've been much worse.
Whereas Gatiss had written the Dickensian Doctor Who episode, The Unquiet Dead.
He's not even doing it on purpose now.
As I'm sure you are aware.
I am aware.
Moffat and Gatiss, both Doctor Who fans and writers, discussed plans for a Holmes adaptation during their numerous train journeys to Cardiff, where Doctor Who was based.
I'm picturing it like the old Sydney Paget illustrations. You know the one where Holmes and Watson are on the train.
Yeah.
But it's Moffat and Gatiss on the train talking about Sherlock.
While they were in Monte Carlo for an awards ceremony, producer Sue Virtue, who happens to be married to Moffat, encouraged Moffat and Gatiss to develop the project themselves before...
Stop trolling.
Before another creative team had the same idea. So essentially, Sue Virtue was like, "Guys, you've come up with that. Someone's going to do it.
Do it.
Like Elementary.
Yeah.
Let's do it now."
Like Houdini and Doyle.
Yeah. So they invited Stephen Thompson to write for the series in September 2008. Not bad for Thompson.
The mystery of Stephen Thompson.
Right.
For the longest time, I thought he was made up. Apparently, he's a real dude because he's written some Doctor Who episodes as well. But I just found it very weird that every episode of Sherlock was either written by Moffat, Gatiss, or Steve Thompson. And it's like, well, who's he? Where's he? And it sounds made up.
Yeah.
Apparently he's a real dude, but Steve, if you're listening, get in touch.
So Gatiss had criticised at the time recent TV adaptations of Sherlock Holmes as too too slow and
fusty.
Yeah.
Fusty.
Yeah. Aiming instead to they wanted to be as irreverent to the canon as the 1930s series with Rathbone and Bruce, which were mostly set in the then contemporary war era, as we said. So Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock uses modern technology such as texting, the internet, GPS to solve the crimes. And Paul McGuigan, who directed 2 episodes of Sherlock, says that this is in keeping with Conan Doyle's character, pointing out that in the books he would use any device possible as whatever is at his disposal. He would just use it.
I'm pretty sure it was McGuigan as well who came up with texting, the famous sort of visual effect in Sherlock, where
lots of places have copied that.
They have copied where when you get a text, the texts appear on the screen because nothing's more boring than a shot of a mobile phone.
So the update maintains various elements of the original story, such as the Baker Street address and Holmes's adversary Moriarty. So here's a trailer as it was shown at the time. Now I find this weird watching back now because this is the trailer that they showed before it ever aired.
Yeah.
They wouldn't make a trailer like this now, right? In my opinion.
Who are you? What do you do?
What do you think?
I say private detective.
When the police are out of their depth, they consult me.
Got anything?
This is his hunting ground, right here in the heart of the city. Why didn't I think of that? Because you're an idiot.
This is my friend, John Watson.
Friend? Colleague. That's how you get your kicks, isn't it? You risk your life to prove you're clever.
Shut up.
I'm saying
You're thinking. It's annoying.
You like the funny cases, don't you? The surprising ones.
Obviously.
The game, Mrs. Hudson, is on. Time to play.
Oh, I am playing.
The name's Sherlock Holmes and the address is 221B Baker Street.
Sherlock, Sunday at 9 on BBC One.
So desperate to be cool.
See what I mean?
And the thing is,
style music.
And the thing is, Sherlock is cool.
Yeah,
you didn't need to try so hard.
No, it's like that felt like a trailer for Hustle or something. But yeah, Sherlock, at times became a bit silly. Like, the later ones where it was when his sister came involved and it was all that, and then they had the Victorian episode, and you had the one where. At the end, he rescues Iron Adler from some sort of James Bond-esque military.
Oh, at the end of a scandal in Belgravia, where she's about to be executed by terrorists, and Sherlock just appears
with a samurai sword and
saves her. Did I ever tell you about Stephen Moffat told me what happens next.
No.
So this is two geeks exclusive. So, AKA information I shouldn't share publicly. So after it was a screening of the final episode of the third series, and I had a few drinks with Stephen Moffat, and I got chatting to him, and he was telling me that one of his friends had asked him what happened next after Sherlock saved Irene Adler, and for some reason Moffat decided to act it out there. He'd had a few wines, and so he's acting out what happened next. So he's being Sherlock with like his sort of machete. He was like, and then Sherlock goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and I was like leaving about the place. All I'll say is, that man loves his Holmes. He was performing a live role play of the unseen epilogue to a scandal in Belgravia. Love it. But
as silly as it got, it's always been so exciting to watch. Like if a new Sherlock episode's coming out, you can't wait, can you? It's a big deal.
And people have a go at the later episodes. But I will say this: the early episodes are strong enough that it's one of those things that you always forgive it.
Yeah. It's so good.
It's like being in a relationship where the early going was so good, and these days it's not so good. But you keep coming back because you go, yeah, but it might be that good again.
Plus, it'll never be too much because they only do a certain amount at once. It's not like they'll do 24 episodes in one season. So
And I don't think people have a go at later Sherlock, but it's still a lot better than like
most
85% of stuff on television. The early stuff is exceptional. The later stuff is pretty good. If we're honest.
So in terms of Cumberbatch. So in terms of Cumberbatch himself getting involved, Moffat and Virtue became interested in casting him after watching his performance in Atonement. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have seen it.
He is great in it.
Weirdly.
The actor was cast after reading the script for the creative team, and Cumberbatch, says The Guardian, has a reputation for playing odd, brilliant men very well, and Holmes is as cold, techie, slightly Aspergish. And I'd say he's very much the Sheldon Cooper of the drama world. Do you know what I mean? They'd get on very well.
Well, Sherlock.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Cumberbatch is very much the Basil Rathbone of his day.
He is.
Prior to playing Sherlock, he had mostly played supporting roles and a lot of kind of slightly slimy villain roles. And Sherlock was the perfect role for both of them.
And here's how Cumberbatch felt at the time when he first joined the series.
What attracted you to the role of Sherlock?
I feel that he's been incarnated before superlatively, both in black and white and colour, by Brett and Rathbone, for my money anyway. And I loved what Downey Jr. and the team did with the new sort of Warner Brothers franchise. I think it's very smart to make him an action man in Victorian guise. But the idea of modernising him and knowing that two men who were completely obsessed with the original source material were in charge of that made me feel quite secure about the idea of it being worthwhile. He's a very attractive character to play because he gets to speak his mind. He has an extraordinary ability, and it's just a lot of fun. And in the hands of those two scriptwriters, you get a lot of just beautifully drawn out scenarios, character studies, both of him and Watson and their burgeoning relationship.
Do you think he's a likeable character?
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, I think however much you may not want to share a flat with him or be in a conversation with him or ask him a question like that, because he'd be merciless and rude, he is very enjoyable as an audience to, revel in his sort of superiority and his straight talking. I think it's, we kind of live in a world where that's our fantasy other life. It's the French phrase esprit d'escalier, and you think, that's what I should have said. And he always has not just bon mots ready. I mean, he is slightly sort of sociopathic and autistic in his approach to people. And I think sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, he can be incredibly, vastly rude and miss the mark as well, with people who are trying to help him and actually would be good to be on side with. But going back to the original question, yeah, I think he's fierce, he's adventurous, he's funny, and he's often right, and he's good. He's a good person to be in company of. So yeah, I do think he's likeable.
But I bet at the time, him in particular was a bit nervous that this was just going to be a farce, because he just wouldn't. The idea was so silly.
Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. Sherlock in the modern day could have been done disastrously badly.
Yeah.
It took people of the skill of Moffat and Gatiss and Virtue to pull it off as well as they did. It could have been a disaster. The fact that it not only was not a disaster, but was like so exceptional in the early days.
Yeah.
One of the greatest TV series of like the past few decades. That says a lot about their skill, I think.
I'll end the Cumberbatch era with just a great scene.
Oh, what is it? There's lots of great scenes.
Looking for a dog. Yes, great dog. That's your brilliant theory. Good. Excellent. Yes, where should we start?
How about them? The sentimental widow and her son, the unemployed fisherman. The answer's yes.
Yes?
She's got a West Highland Terrier called Whiskey. Not exactly what we're looking for.
Sherlock, for God's sake.
Look at the jumper he's wearing. Hardly worn. Clearly he's uncomfortable in it. Maybe it's because of the material. More likely the hideous pattern suggests it's a present, probably Christmas. So he wants into his mother's good books. Why? Almost certainly money. He's treating her to a meal, but his own portion is small. That means he wants to impress her, but he's trying to economize on his own food.
Well, maybe he's just not hungry.
No, small plate, starter. He's practically licked it clean. She's nearly finished her pavlova. If she treated him, he'd have as much as he wanted. He's hungry, all right, and not well off. You can tell that by the state of his cuffs and shoes. How do you know she's his mother? Who else would give him a Christmas present like that? Well, it could be an aunt or an older sister, but mother's more likely. Now, he was a fisherman. Scarring pattern on his hands, very distinctive fish hooks. They're all quite old now. It suggests he's been unemployed for some time. Not much industry in this part of the world, so he's turned to his widowed mother for help. Widowed? Yes, obviously. She's got a man's wedding ring on a chain round her neck. Clearly her late husband's too big for her finger. She's well dressed, but her jewelry's cheap. She could afford better, but she's kept it. Sentimental. Now, the dog, tiny little hairs all over the leg from where it gets a little bit too friendly. But no hairs above the knees, suggesting it's a small dog, probably a terrier. In fact, it is a West Highland Terrier called Whiskey. How the hell do you know that, Sherlock? Because she was on the same train as us and I heard her calling its name, and that's not cheating. That's listening. I use my senses, John, unlike some people. So you see, I am fine. In fact, I've never been better. So just leave me alone.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, why would you listen to me? I'm just your friend.
I don't have friends.
Nah. Wonder why.
And sorry, that's from apparently one of the lesser episodes, The Hounds of Baskerville, which is not generally regarded all that well in the Sherlock canon. Maybe I've had a few beers. I think it's become very fashionable of late to shit on it. To shit on Sherlock. The opposite of no shit Sherlock. And it, you know what, even at its you know, as I said, at its lowest, whatever the opposite of a peak is. Ebb. There we go. It's still really, really good. And Cumberbatch is great and Freeman's great.
And like,
it's really good.
I love a good romance. And
it's one of the best.
They are one of the best, aren't they? It's Turk and JD.
Yeah.
Chandler and Joey.
Yeah.
John and Sherlock.
Cheers, mate.
And then two geeks.
Love you.
On to you.
Oh, back to me.
The last one.
So, at last, on to the source of our booze. It is the great Jeremy Brett, who appeared in 4 series that were aired on ITV from 1984 to 1994. He appeared in all 41 episodes, mostly written by Upstairs Downstairs co-creator John Hawksworth. Sidebar, did I ever tell you about when I interviewed Tom Hardy?
No.
And so...
Didn't know you did.
I interviewed Tom Hardy and his father, Chips.
Oh, yes.
For the TV series Taboo.
Yeah.
And during this interview, Chips was talking about how, in his opinion, Taboo was influenced by great BBC dramas of the past. So he was listing off all these shows, I don't know, whatever, Wuthering Heights, you know, all these shows. Hardy had sat down, Tom Hardy, had said nothing, just sort of like hunched over the table, was staring me dead in the eye, not saying a word, while his father listed off, you know, these inspirations. And so Chips was like, yes, Wuthering Heights, Wolf Hall. Tom Hardy goes, upstairs, downstairs. First thing he said. Didn't even say hello. Just sat down and then upstairs, downstairs.
I like that idea.
Terrifying man.
I like that idea. That has nothing to do with what you're talking about. It was just a phrase that he says every now and then because he's so mental. Just upstairs, downstairs.
Upstairs, downstairs, upstairs, downstairs.
Tom, just think of the happy place.
Anyway, sidebar. Back from the sidebar. So Jeremy Brett appeared from 1984 to 1985 in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, from 1986 to 1988 in The Return of Sherlock Holmes, in 1991 in The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes, and in 1994 in The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. He appeared alongside David Burke, father of the actor Tom Burke, and later Edward Hardwicke as Dr. Watson. Charles Gray, who played Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever, and Henderson in You Only Live Twice, two of the Bond films, he played Mycroft. And a few of the stories, including The Sign of Four and the old favourite, Hound of the Baskervilles.
I've heard of this. I've
vaguely familiar. They were adapted as feature-length specials.
My mind rebels at stagnation. Give me problems. Give me work. Give me the most abstruse cryptogram, the most intricate analysis, and I'm in my proper atmosphere. Then I can dispense with artificial stimulants. But I abhor the dull routine of existence. I crave mental exaltation. That is why I've chosen my own profession, or rather, created it, for I am the only one in the world.
So Brett's Holmes was sort of moody and manic. He said himself, Holmes is the hardest part I've ever played, harder than Hamlet or Macbeth. Brett is often considered the screen Holmes closest and most faithful to Conan Doyle's. His Sherlock is rarely seen in the famous Deerstalker and Cloak, which is more in line with Sidney Paget's illustrations in the Strand magazine, when he rarely wore that sort of iconic outfit. We do love on Two Geeks, don't we, a shitty Wikipedia entry, and this is a great one from the Wikipedia page for the Deerstalker hat, which of course references Sherlock Holmes. Less informed depictions of Holmes having wearing this cap in the city, failing to take into account the fact that the fashion-conscious Holmes would be loath to commit such a sartorial faux pas. The Deerstalker is traditionally a rural outdoorsman's cap. It is not appropriate headgear for the properly dressed urban gentleman.
Noob.
I love the song I went to that by Jeffery.
Why are you so annoyed?
Really annoyed. Brett, like some of his predecessors, like Cushing, conducted extensive research into the great detective and Arthur Conan Doyle himself, and he was very attentive to discrepancies between the scripts he was given and Conan Doyle's original stories. He was so into it, Brett, that apparently he kept a 77-page Baker Street file, that's what he called it. Not Bob Holness. He kept a Baker Street file on everything from Holmes' mannerisms to his eating and drinking habits. But there's a slightly darker edge to this, because Holmes's obsessive and depressive personality actually reflected Jeremy Brett's own, because he had bipolar disorder in real life. And he became slightly fixated on the character. So he would dream about Holmes. Apparently he would have nightmares about Holmes. And when they were filming the various Sherlock Holmes series, while the other actors would disappear to the canteen for lunch, Brett would sit alone on the set, reading scripts, looking at every nuance, and he would also read Sherlock Holmes stories on weekends and holidays. He took lithium to counter his bipolar, which slowed him and made him gain weight. He also apparently smoked 60 cigarettes a day, Jeremy Brett.
He just sounds like Sherlock Holmes.
He sounds like... I know we've talked about, Rathbone looking like Holmes, being born to play Holmes. Same with Cushing.
Is it?
Brett kind of was Holmes. During the last decade of his life, Brett was treated in hospital several times for mental illness, and his health and appearance sort of visibly deteriorated by the time he completed the later episodes of the Sherlock Holmes series. So you can kind of... he's
can notice.
Brilliant, but you can kind of see a man in decline watching it. It's a little bit tragic. At one point, during filming of the final series, Brett collapsed on set in 1994, suffering from a disease of the heart muscle. He had to break his contract with Granada, who made the series, leaving 18 out of the 60 Holmes stories unadapted. So his is one of the most comprehensive of Holmes adaptations. He did a lot of the stories, but not quite all. And Jeremy Brett died on the 12th of September 1995, age 61, at his home in Clapham, London, from heart failure. In an obituary for the New York Times, it was written that Brett was regarded as the quintessential Holmes.
It is pleasant to me to observe, Watson, that you have so far grasped this truth.
that in these little records of our cases which you have been good enough to draw up, and I am bound to say, occasionally embellished, that you have given prominence not so much to the many cause célèbre and sensational trials in which I have figured, but rather to those incidents which have given room for those faculties of deduction and logical synthesis, which I have made my special province.
Kind of you to say so, Holmes.
You have erred, perhaps, in attempting to put colour and life into each of your statements, instead of confining yourself to placing upon record that severe reasoning from cause to effect, which is really the only notable feature about the thing.
You are always in a disputatious mood when you choose that pipe. It seems to me that I've done you full justice in the matter.
No. It is not selfishness and conceit. If I claim full justice for my art, it is because crime is common, logic is rare. Therefore, it is upon logic, rather than upon crime, that you should dwell. You have degraded what should have been a course of lectures into a series of tales.
Really, Holmes, I hardly think my poor scribblings deserve that. They have, after all, made your name a household word.
Oh, sure, my dear fellow. What do the public, the great and observant public, who can hardly tell a weave of eyes tooth or a composite of eyes left thumb, care about the finer shades of analysis and deduction?
Bit of Brett trivia.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of Brett trivia. Go on. So, along with his appearances in the fantastic television series, Brett and Edward Hardwicke, his second Watson, also appeared on stage in 1988 and 1989 in The Secret of Sherlock Holmes, a two-hander play. Imagine if you could go to the West End and watch Cumberbatch and Freeman.
Yeah.
It'd be great, and it was the equivalent. They were the Holmes and Watson of their day. Get to see him on stage would have been fantastic. Also, I love this. In 1992, Brett and Hardwicke appeared in a mini-episode of Sherlock Holmes, about 10 minutes in length, as part of the Four Oaks Mystery, shown as part of an ITV charity telethon. This episode formed one of a four-part sequence of stories featuring the stars of four ITV detective shows of the time, all separately working to solve the same mystery. So they would, in different time periods, they gradually solve the mystery. So along with Sherlock Holmes, the other shows that produced mini-episodes for the special were Taggart, Inspector Wexford, and Vandervalk.
Amazing. Oh,
what a great crossover.
That's amazing.
The Infinity War of its day. As you mentioned, Jude Law appeared in a 1991 episode of the Granada series. Jeremy Brett had previously played Dr. Watson.
What?
On stage, opposite Charlton Heston as Holmes in the 1980 Los Angeles production of The Crucifer of Blood.
Imagine watching that, Heston and Brett.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah.
Which that later got made into a film with Heston, not with Brett. That makes him one of only a few actors to have played both Holmes and Watson professionally. The others include Nigel Bruce, who played Holmes once on the radio in 1945.
Just fleeing.
Patrick Macnee, he did both, and Edward Woodward. Yeah,
do you know who would play both Holmes and Watson?
Who?
Edward Woodward.
Shocking. Positively shocking. Which brings me on to Brett was considered to replace Sean Connery as James Bond in the late 1960s after he departed the franchise, but he turned the part down, feeling that playing 007 would harm his career. Now, I like this little bit of trivia because it's multi-layered. Jeremy Brett, did you know, is the cousin of Martin Clunes.
Really?
Yeah, Martin Clunes, who played Arthur Conan Doyle in the 2015 miniseries Arthur and George, opposite the actor Arsha Ali, who auditioned to play Moriarty in Sherlock. Dropping the mic. Everything's connected. Boom. Done it. Beat that. Right.
So
as Eminem once said, let's get down to business.
Right. Well, I've got my 6, I have to say.
In order?
Yeah,
Alright. You've had your 6. Give me a 6, and I will let you know if I agree. We might be in perfect harmony, and there'll be no debate to be had.
6 and 5, I'm willing to swap around.
Right.
So I was going to put, as good as he is, Stevens in 6th, just because he only did the 1.
Yeah, fair, and it's a fantastic movie.
And it's an interesting take.
It's an interesting take, and it's a
Yeah.
fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel like his Holmes is as iconic as the
Yeah.
rest, so I'm happy
Yeah.
with Stevens at 6.
So I was going to put Downey in 5th.
All right.
And then I was going to put Cushing in 4th.
Right, because that seems low for Cushing.
But
wait and see.
Rathbone in 3rd.
Oh, that's mental.
Cumberbatch in 2nd.
Yeah.
Brett number 1.
Right. I
See
feel
what
like
I mean? See what I mean? It's tough, isn't it?
This is really tough. Nothing elementary about this.
I think 6 and 5 are sorted. I don't think you can.
Right, we got 6 and 5 pinned down, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, that top 4 is tough.
I don't.
Would you put Cushing above Rathbone then, or would you put Rathbone even higher?
No. Cushing at number 4 is fine.
Okay, Cushing number 4.
Cushing.
So that's the top 3, but we don't know what order.
It's for me. It's I don't know between Cumberbatch and Rathbone.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Come on.
Because they're both fantastic and they're both completely different eras. But who do you enjoy watching more?
It's different though. It's
I
totally
know,
different.
I know, but who in our life has brought more?
All right. So in our opinion,
Yeah.
it's really tough.
Yeah.
I want to do one of those, joint. All right.
Well, you say yours. What's?
No.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Rathbone, Cumbers, Brett. Is Brett the best? did you
Brett
say?
is clearly the best.
Okay.
We're set on that.
Yeah.
That Jeremy Brett. I feel like Jeremy Brett was Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
He looked the part.
He's the
He lived the life.
John Suchet as Poirot.
As who?
Poirot. In terms of Sherlock, he's the equivalent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Brett is the most faithful portrayal.
Yeah.
He looks the part, he acted the part, he was so into it, arguably to his detriment. He resembled Sherlock in so many ways. Brett, I think, is unquestionably the greatest screen Sherlock Holmes of all time.
I mean, Rathbone, he started it off.
Yeah.
He was the granddaddy.
What was it?
The big man, the granddaddy.
the big man, Big Daddy Rathbone.
Hard-ass, you couldn't have any of this without him.
No.
But, he also, that era, is very much the stuffy kind of thing, that the archetype thing, not their fault, but that's what you think. Whereas Cumberbatch, he just provides something which is...
Let's agree
that
you could not have Cumberbatch without Rathbone.
You couldn't have any of these without Rathbone.
Having said that, what Cumberbatch does is more interesting, but only because he was able to build on the fantastic work that Rathbone did.
Yes. And I think if someone else was cast in the new Sherlock, they wouldn't have done it as good.
True, but equally, but by the same token, had anyone but Rathbone been cast, Sherlock Holmes would not be as big a deal as he is now. We were talking about how we have known Sherlock for longer than we can retain cogent memory.
Yeah.
Without Rathbone, would that have been the case? Maybe not. No, we've said it, and we've defended our positioning. We're gonna get torn apart.
Okay.
But I think Cumberbatch, as a performance, Rathbone's more important.
Yeah.
But Cumberbatch is better.
All right. So we got Stevens, Downey Jr, Cushing, Rathbone, Cumberbatch, Brett.
It's a solid Sherlock 6.
There you go. Good.
Cheers.
That went down better than the Die Hard ranking.
It did. That was less fraught. Much less fraught.
So there you go. So I'd say the end is afoot.
Oh, very good.
Which I'd say this is the longest episode we've ever done.
No.
I'm
How long are we running?
As recording. 1 hour 53.
No.
We've never gone longer than this.
No, we did.
We haven't gone longer.
No. When we did the end of year special, it ran to like 2.5 hours.
Did it?
Yeah, it did.
But I think
I was sweaty and exhausted.
At the end of play, after editing, I think this is going to be the longest one. So
maybe.
If you're still with us, fair dues.
Well done. But I feel like that at the end of every episode.
I just also, before we end this, I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Claire's podcast. She gave a really lovely mention on her recent show, which you should definitely check out. Her and Ryan's show, Tales from the Bargain Bin, which is a show all about this kind of mockbuster, you know, those ones we've talked about before, those really shite, you know, transmorphers. So they take a different film like that and compare it to the original, all that kind of stuff.
There was a Sherlock Holmes mockbuster, cashing in on the success of the Robert Downey Jr. version, which starred Gareth David Lloyd, Yanto from Torchwood, as Watson.
All right.
So
Claire and Ryan, do that.
Do that, guys. And yeah, you should definitely check out their podcast. It's
Tales from the Bargain Bin. You can get it tfbb.podbean.com. But yeah, as in terms of our show, you know, head over to our social channels, 2 Geeks Cast on all those, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as you will.
You can also listen to all of our previous episodes. There's loads. There is positively loads over on our website, which is 2geeks2beers.com. Also on iTunes.
Yeah, give us a rating and a review.
You should definitely
massive help when you do that.
Give us a rating and a review. 5 stars.
Yeah.
That's subliminal. I slipped that in. They didn't even notice.
No.
And on the off chance you're just, you know, a big Cumberbatch obsessive and have tuned into this episode, subscribe. There's loads of great stuff. Subscribe and listen back to all the old episodes.
Yeah. And next time we're going to tackle a franchise, which is...
I've totally forgotten what we're doing next time.
Which is quite current. It is the Jurassic Park series.
Oh, yeah.
The new one's coming out, so we're going to go through all of that. So I'm going to leave you all with... I was trying to find a song, you know, I thought maybe you'd get a bit of score from one of the films, something like that, but it's a bit boring. So I trolled the internet trying to find a song or something.
Yes, the theme tune to Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
Well, that would have been good. But instead I've gone for... It's called Sherlock Holmes by a band that I love quite a lot, Sparks, who I did meet once and had a great interview with in a pub, and they were fantastic. So this is Sparks, Sherlock Holmes. Enjoy, and see you next time. Cheers.
Nothing?
Yeah, go on.
Matters to you and me, but it can't touch Sherlock Holmes. Dogs bark and he knows their breed and knows where they went last night, knows their masters too. Oh baby, hold me tight, just pretend I'm Sherlock Holmes, just pretend I'm Sherlock Holmes, just pretend I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Well, that was another thing when, you know...
It's like Prince Charles.
Yeah.